is that the event that we met at was about failure. So this presentation about change management is about preventing failure, or at least minimizing it. You can't prevent it, but mostly what it's about is feelings. Ooh, I'm not good with that. But change management is about managing feelings. Everything else is ancillary. So thank you. I had predicted to myself, I said, I'll have 25 attendees, and I counted and I have 25. So my change management skills are going well here. The title of this presentation is Change Management in Unpredictable Environments, but my colleague Jim Hoby told me yesterday, Jackie, with all the AI going on, we're not going to have unpredictable environments anymore. It's all going to be very predictable. So I feel like this is already an outmoded presentation. So it's the past. I guess I should change it. Change management in predictive environments, but we'll go ahead with unpredictable because I think we all know that everything is unpredictable. I'm laughing at the AI component of this. During Tuesday's kickoffs, did anybody listen to Peter Coffee at Noon on Tuesday? A couple of people did, I know I did. Peter talked about, he had a slide that said we should go all out with change right across the entire organization, and he referenced Salesforce doing that in 2007 when they adopted the Scrum Agile methodology and just went full force with that. So let's think about that and embrace that directive that directive from Peter as we think about this for the next 30 minutes or so. But two cautionary statements from me before we get started. And this is an interactive workshop because that helps us bring our feelings up. But two cautionary statements. One is that I did not invent or discover anything about change management, nor did I invent some new way to encapsulate or frame it. So not claiming any of that. And the other thing is that because I'm going to reference change, and change is a powerful factor in our lives, sometimes change is negative. And when I think about some of the changes in my life, it's not all positive. So it's not my intent to dredge up those feelings. I hope that you'll focus on some positive changes. So let me just pause there for a second, so we can all think about change. I'd like you to think about some change in your life. And I'm going to now make sure that works. So 3 components to this presentation: realities of change, managing change, and a summary, short and sweet, unlike change itself. First, a brief digression. Like I bet most of you, I've been part of many employee engagement surveys. Does that strike a bell? You fill out a form, and then HR never tells you what the results were. The results are always the same. There are 2 complaints by employees every time. Anyone want to guess? What was that? Number 1, ding, yes, absolutely. Money, or for those who are trying to be gentle, the labor tasks I'm asked to do, my workload. Right, so it's either money or workload, same thing. But number 2, anyone want to guess what the second biggest complaint on employee engagement surveys is? Communication. The communication at this company is awful. The communication on my team is awful. My manager can't communicate. No one communicates. The communication is all lies here. So even though I've been part of companies that have been part of Pittsburgh's top places to work, things like that, the number 1 complaint is always still money, and number 2, communication. So the top consideration in change management, from my perspective, is effective communication, because that's where we're going to fall down. You can do all the planning, all the remediation, all the tweaking, all the success measures you want, but if you don't communicate, you don't get buy-in. You get Sisyphus. You roll the rock up the hill, you turn around and it rolls right back down, because no matter what you put in place, you didn't communicate the change well enough. I'd like to everyone to take a moment. Do you have a pen, pencil, or a device that you use with your thumbs? Anything like that? Just take a moment, if you will, and list a couple of things you think about change, or you feel about change. Just list a couple for just a moment here. When you think of change, what do you think of? How does it make you feel? What does it make you think of? Not much over here. Okay. All right, stop if you would just for a second. Could you raise your dominant hand, please, if you have one? If you have a dominant hand, would you raise that? Put that one behind your back, please, and continue with your typing or writing about how you feel about change. Let's see if you feel a little different now. You just had to change. You still feel the same way you were feeling a minute ago? You can't even thumb that phone anymore. All right, so something to think about. You're writing happily, you're saying how I feel about change, and then change is imposed on you. That's a little bit jarring. I'd like you to do another little physical exercise, and many of you have probably already done this, so please bear with me and humor the people who may not have done this before, if you will. So just bear with us. You know, we've all been through the trenches of change, but others haven't. So would you please cross your arms? Would you please cross them the other way? I can't. Put that hand that was under the other bicep, under the other, over the bicep. I don't know. I can't even do it. That's change. And how does that feel? What's a couple of words that people feel about that? Uncomfortable, Matt? Awkward? Weird? And yet that changes you. It's just you. And it's your arms, and it's for 15 seconds. And yet already we feel awkward and weird and uncomfortable. And that's a microcosm of organizational change or life change or technology change. Yet so quickly those feelings come up. Let's do one more exercise. Looks like everybody except Mike over here might be at a table, and this person in the white sweater. So if you would just pair up with someone, think about a life change that you've gone through. Maybe it's a move, a career change, a family structure change. Just take a minute with somebody, or sure, the three of you guys, 3 people. Just share a little bit about that change, what happened, how you felt. Okay, not to interrupt, just to ask that you wrap it up. What kind of changes did people talk about? New job? Moving from one place to another? I see some nods. Family change, maybe? Moving to a new house? Maybe losing someone or something in your life? I moved my family here in 1998 from New York City. The kids were 6 and 8. I'm a planner. I planned everything. And it did not go as expected, but we're still here today. So I guess everything in life is a sine curve, up and down. And I guess we rode that out. I hope you guys did too, and I hope that the changes that you talked about were mostly ended up positive, or as my old colleague from Free Markets, my former colleague from Free Markets, Mike, said to me yesterday, the arrow generally points up. So hopefully that was the case. All right, I'm gonna do one more thing. I have this extremely bright bouncy ball. So I'm gonna bounce it, and if you would, someone please catch it and bounce it again, if that's okay. I'm gonna start with Reese over here. See if I can get it to go up. Thanks for getting up, Reese, I appreciate that.
And now bounce it to somebody else?
Anybody, sure, if you don't mind throwing it, and let's not be scared here too much, it's pretty light. Middle table. All right, maybe another one back there if you don't mind. Look, we're all at a concert, or I don't know what, a Penguins game here. Okay. Thanks, Mike. One more, back in the back. Maybe off the floor. Okay, good. Oh, there it goes. Holy smokes. All right, thank you very much. Thanks. Thanks for the demo. Thank you, volunteers. I appreciate that. Oh my gosh, it's going to keep going. It's just going to keep going around for the next 20 minutes. Let me ask everybody, did anyone have any doubt that that ball was going to bounce after I bounced it to Reese? Do we have any naysayers here in the crowd? Was anyone sitting there going like, the second time it's going to just stop? No, we all expected it was going to bounce. And here's an incredibly hit over your head metaphor. Isn't that life? Isn't that change? Organizations, people, we're going to bounce back, generally speaking. And again, I'm trying not to go on the dark side, but generally speaking, whatever the change is, whether it's personal, organizational, technical, whatever it is, the likelihood is that the entity bounces back. And so hopefully that's a little visual reminder of that. Okay. Managing change. I mentioned that it's about feelings. Change is mostly about feelings. So I would suggest that when you are planning change, that you start with eliciting feelings with some of these kinds of icebreakers. Before we talk about, for example, a new CRM system or a change to how our user population logs in, let's not start with the technical issues, but let's start with some team building. I think we've heard while we've been here already one and a half days, we've heard a lot of people talk about AI, the fear of losing jobs, work, decisions made for you, things like that. Reese was telling me that the most powerful thing he's heard so far was about hallucinations and how AI and generated hallucinations are so powerful for historical figures and things like that. And I asked Reese, I said, were you, like me, kind of taken aback by that word, hallucinations? I mean, that's a powerful feeling word. When I hear someone say the hallucinations of AI or generative anything, I'm taken aback with, I want to say, almost negativity. And I don't know if that's purposeful. I'm not sure. But it's interesting because it's certainly not a neutral word. We've heard our speakers talk about Robert Heinlein. Peter Coffey on Tuesday mentioned Robert Heinlein and the list of things that people should do, and he ended with specializations are for insects. That was fascinating to me because Robert Heinlein, if you're not familiar, was a science fiction writer famous for the word grok, which was a word that had no connotation when he invented it, and now means understand. To most of, if we grok it, then we know it means understand. Robert Heinlein also was famous for many other quotes, but one that I like is, "I never learned from a man who agreed with me." Okay, so that's interesting because certainly, at least for me, I tend to invite people to the table who agree with me, because then we're all going to get to the same place very quickly. In fact, wouldn't change be great if I could just tell you, look, we're going to do it this way, okay? Ready, go. And you would be right on board. But that's not how it happens. In fact, I think we know that most groups of people are generally divided into thirds. 1/3 are cheerleaders or advocates, people that get right on board with the pom-poms and say, absolutely, let's make this change, let's fix this thing. And we have 1/3 who are detractors. The negative people, that's never going to work. We tried it before. You're an idiot. This group can't do that. We don't have the money. We don't have the time. And then we have 1/3 that they're middle of the road. They're ambivalent. They're going to see which way the wind blows, so to speak. And here's our focus. We know we've got those cheerleaders with us. Yay. We're never going to turn the detractors around. But we have to invite a couple of them to the table so that we hear their voices, their opinions. We can at least try to incorporate those in our change. And then our goal is to turn those middle-of-the-road people into advocates, into positives. Because if we've got 2/3 of the people on board, we're going to be able to move forward. Does that sound about right? I usually go with the 80-20 rule. This is more like 67-33, but we won't slice it too finely here. Does that sound about right? I see some nodding, but I'm sure other people have had different experiences. Can you make change happen with 42%, 40% of the people on board? I'm seeing a little bit of shrugging. Can you make change happen with 10% of the people on board? I'm going with no on that one. So something to think about. Use icebreakers to get people at least engaged, get some feelings out about change. And we're going to talk at the end briefly about 4 other types of exercises that are commonly used here. I'm a big believer in celebrating. Matt mentioned that I like to celebrate individual, team, and organizational success. And I do. I have somebody tomorrow taking a certification test, so I'm looking forward to celebrating success there. I celebrate promotions, and I set and celebrate goals for change. So setting metrics for change success, I think, is key, because otherwise you don't know if the change was successful or not. So I would say that. And then the last thing I would want to just point out is that the Deming cycle is well known for a reason. And even if you don't know it's the Deming cycle and you simply say plan, do, check, act, that for some reason that has inculcated itself in our brains. So let's talk about the Deming cycle a little bit. The first thing we have to do is plan. If you are not a fan of a change advisory board, I urge you to rethink your position. The change advisory board sounds like a bureaucratic stumbling block or impediment. It is not. It is the opportunity to invite all the stakeholders to the table and let them have their say. I'm a project manager reluctantly as well by trade, and I'm a big fan of phase 2. So I love to invite negative stakeholders to the table, note their concerns, and then tell them, we're going to address all of those in phase 2. And so I would urge you to do that. Being heard is, in my experience, 2/3 of the way to being understood or felt or appreciated. I started talking about employee engagement surveys, and my favorite is Marcus Buckingham. So I've heard Gallup mentioned a couple of times here in the past day and a half. Marcus Buckingham, famously from Gallup, has the 12-question employee engagement survey. And one of those questions says, at work, my opinion matters. It doesn't say my opinion is acted on, my opinion wins the day. It says my opinion matters. And if your team doesn't answer that question, yes, I agree, then any change that you impose is going to be fought because you didn't get their opinion, you didn't listen. You may not act on it, but it has to matter. You have to at least give it time. And I'm trying not to be dismissive. I probably am coming across dismissive. I'm not dismissive. I do care. I do want to hear it. If possible, I'd love to address it. But the only way to address it is to hear it. So the Deming cycle is planned, but that means a change advisory board. The next step is to do, and I put in parentheses just a little. Because the last thing you want to do when you're implementing any change is do it wholeheartedly. I think we heard, I'm going to get his name wrong, the doctor who spoke yesterday about the nuclear power plant materials and timeline. Did folks attend that? Some folks attend that session? Right. And he talked about how the prediction for the cost and the prediction for the timeline were so way off. So imagine that you're building a nuclear power plant and you build the whole thing and then you go back and say, how were our estimates? You can't do anything at that point. You need to build a little bit and then say, how are our estimates now? Okay, what do we need to do to account for the variance? So I would say plan, do just a little. Test it. Again, you're going to have hopefully you're going to have your success metrics, and then tweak. Oh gosh, this is taking longer than we thought. I better make that adjustment now rather than next year. This is costing more than we thought. I better make that budget variance now, not wait till the end of this project and find we've run out of funds. The other thing about checking outcomes is that you're always going to have unintended impacts, unintended effects. Can anyone think of a change that you've done where you had an unintended impact? When I moved my family here in 1998, I enrolled my kids in Pittsburgh public schools, and I had to pull them out 4 days later because they got beat up. That was an unintended impact. I didn't plan for that. Now that I've seeded you a little bit, can you think of a change that you've gone through personally or professionally that had an unintended impact? Matt's like, no, I can't think of any. Okay. All right, well, let's do a little exercise here. We're going to make a change in how Hike 2 handles this event. You know, I saw a small garbage can out in the hallway. What's the name of this hallway here? It has like a name for lunch and breakfast and stuff. What was that? Thank you, the Shenandoah Trail. That's bizarre. Okay, so there's a small basket at the or can at the end of the hall that says recycling here. It has a little sign. Has anyone seen that? That's how not widespread the recycling effort is here. Well, I think we can do better in this room. I think we can do better. So everybody here has a piece of paper. And you know what? Let's not just throw that in with all the other refuse. Let's recycle that paper. Is that okay with everybody? All right, so I think most people, I ran out towards the end, but most people have a piece of paper. Is it okay with everybody if we just gather those papers back up and recycle them? No one minds? Okay, great. Is there any reason why this person in the white sweater, is there any reason why you would object to us recycling your piece of paper? What does your special piece of paper say? It's a $1,000 bill. Would you mind if we just recycled that? You would, I bet you would mind. So I guess you don't want us to just come bulldozing through here and grab your paper and recycle it. Is there anyone else who has a piece of paper that might be negatively impacted if we recycled it? You do, right there. What does your piece of paper have on it? $1,000 bill. Uh-oh. We better not be just willy-nilly. I hope this guy doesn't go on vacation and we just sweep past his cubicle or his desk or his office and take that piece of paper. Is there anyone else who might object?
I don't think this would be a good idea. Nuclear code.
The nuclear codes Matt has on his piece of paper. And yet the IT team is just going to, we've implemented, Matt, a new file retention policy so that we're going to just delete everything older than 3 years. So we're just going to delete that file, okay? The nuclear codes. Okay, so if we were simply to do something as benign as collect up all the white paper or all the scrap paper and recycle it, which is a good thing to do, am I right? Reese, this is a good thing to do? Recycle paper, better for the planet? And yet, we are going to have unintended consequences. We're going to lose thousands of dollars, we're going to lose key piece of information, all because we didn't ask everybody for their input on this simple change exercise. Now, does that resonate a little bit? Does this making you think of a change that you might have been part of where somebody at the last minute was like, hey, wait a minute. Gwen, can you think of anything like that? No, Gwen is such a good project manager that would not happen to her. That's why I should not have called on her. Well, I'd like to remind you of something that Peter Mulford said yesterday. He was talking about the book Guns, Germs, and Steel. Is anyone familiar with that book besides Peter's reference to it? It's about this big, so I commend you if you are familiar with it. But it has another quote that I like out of that same book. The whole modern world has been shaped by lopsided outcomes. We can't predict the outcome of our changes with any kind of fealty or reliability. In fact, we're probably going to get outcomes we don't expect. But those might be the most serendipitous outcomes. We might find that there's $2,000 or the equivalent lurking in our file system or the nuclear codes because we didn't get the outcome we wanted, which was just collecting up all the paper. So that's something I would just go back to. Then the next item is act. Once you've planned, done a little bit, checked, tweaked your plan, now act and roll it out. But here's something that most people in my experience, don't stop and do. We rolled out the change. It's successful. We met our metrics. Everything's good. People are happy. No one's complaining, at the water cooler or whatever, or in the Slack channel. But here's the problem. We don't go back 6 months or 1 year later and audit. And what we find is that the boulder has rolled back down the hill. The bad habits are back. The files are retained longer than we had said they were going to be. The people are still using the abacus and not Excel, whatever it is. If we don't audit and go back and make sure that we have the underpinnings in place, that change is wiped out. And what happens is 1, 2, or 3 years later, somebody says, why did we never do this? And we say, well, we did. You can't tell. You may be familiar with the notion that you never really break a habit, you just replace one habit with another. If all we ask people to do is break a habit, they're going to go back to it. There's a void, there's an emptiness there. We have to replace it. So if we're going to impose a change, we've got to replace whatever the activity or the treasure was with something new. Let me pause there for people to disagree with me or challenge me or share an example. Amanda, if I heard you, you said, go deeper into an example of where there was an option to not make a change?
No, once you make the change, agree about the change, you roll it out, but you're finding it's not well adopted. Do you have any tips and tricks there?
Amanda, thank you for the question. What happens when you make a change and it's not well adopted? What do you do to go back and make it adopted? Not being the oracle, I don't have that, but I would go back to what I said earlier, which is when you're making a change, make it just a little bit. So we call that, what do we call that? A pilot program, a test. We say that's the dev environment. We do a little bit, and then we see what's the pushback, what's the failure, did we meet our success metrics, do we have to change the process, did we invite all the stakeholders, do we have naysayers out there derailing the project because we didn't let them be heard at the beginning. That's my attempt. Where I have had a project fail because we did it, and I did have this happen last summer. We wanted to eliminate 2002 technology. So the City of Pittsburgh, as you may know, was under Act 47 budget oversight for 14 years, from 2004 to 2018. So we were not able to invest in technology. So we had frozen in time that 2004 technology. And if those of you who are technical can think back and old enough to think back this far, that's the NT days, Windows NT. And so there was a lot of technology such as roaming profiles and things like that that was part of the NT world back 20-something years ago that was still present in the City of Pittsburgh a few years ago when we finally did get the money to go and reinvest and re-up our technology and pay down our technology debt. However, 20 years is a long time to be supporting a technology that doesn't change. So there's a lot of resistance to change. So last summer when we were finishing up that project, or not finishing up, I'm not sure it'll ever be finished, but when we were reaching a point of eliminating some of that 2002, 2004 technology, we had a lot of people really invested in not wanting that to happen because they were really good at supporting it and using it, and they were familiar with it and comfortable with it. And I think my colleague Jim, who was part of that team, would agree with me, I hope, that getting the actual technical team to let go was much harder than any other part of it. Jim, would you like to add anything to that? Oh, I like that. Thank you, Jim. I did not prime Jim for this in advance. He said once you finally do let go and accept the change, you could in his experience that they found that it was a much better world. But that resistance, 20 years built up of resistance to change, is difficult to overcome. And again, the technology wasn't the issue. The process, the project plan weren't the issue. The technical details of getting it done weren't the issue. It was the emotions. It was the feelings of the people that were invested in maintaining this old technology that was the hurdle that we had to overcome. And we still are, to be clear. It's not a done deal. Anything else? All right. Let me see here. I think that is I think that's about where I'm wrapping up here. Oh, I wanted to just mention, I talked about icebreakers, so look at this. I'm reminding myself because I'm so bad at it. Communicate, and then be sure to communicate again. In case I didn't mention that at the beginning, one of the two things employees say is the worst about their employer, their company, their organization: failure to communicate. So if you're the kind of person who likes lists and alliteration, then I would urge you to use the 4 Ps exercise. We heard one of the speakers talk about 4 Ps yesterday. I think it was in the afternoon. So it could be any 4 Ps, but the exercise that's most commonly used with change management is the project, purpose, particulars, and people. So you list those on a whiteboard, and you say, okay, what are the objections or impediments we're going to run into in terms of this project? The purpose of the project, and we've heard people talk about purpose. Yesterday we had a very moving presentation that ended with a gentleman talking about fostering babies, and that was a purpose in his and his wife's life, and that was very powerful. Purpose can be very powerful, even in the dry world of employment and technology and organizations. What are the particulars that we may not have thought about? I'm not the kind of person who thinks about details, so I need people at the table who will help remind me of those details. And what about the people? The people involved are going to make or break the project. So that's one additional exercise you could do. Another one that's commonly talked about is the fishbowl exercise. So what we would do is we would have this table with 6 chairs, but we would have 8 people around the table. 2 of them would be note takers. So let's talk about this project, let's talk about this change. And the note takers are taking notes on the discussion, on the points of agreement, on the points of disagreement. But here's the twist. After 15 minutes or a half hour or 40 minutes, ask those note takers to sit at the table and share with us. How did it feel to not be part of the conversation? How did it feel to be an observer but not have your opinion solicited? That can be a powerful way, again, to evoke those feelings of being excluded from the decision-making process. Those excluded people are going to stop your change. They're going to prevent it from happening. The other 2 are more similar, and they talk really about adjectives. So a force field exercise asks that people say reasons why they would be for or against a change, and then how do we maximize the fors and minimize the against. A more straightforward kind of fun one is an up and down, thumbs up, thumbs down. So I might ask each of you to say, or 10 of you to say a word that you associate with change. And then we would say, okay, let's say the word is positive. No, that's too obvious. Let's say the word is challenging. Okay, does that give us a positive connotation? Do we like a challenge? Or is it a negative connotation? Do we dislike a challenge? Let's take the words that give us a positive connotation and let's wrap those around the change. This change is going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to make us happier. It's going to make us more successful. Let's use those words in our marketing campaign when we go to communicate, whatever the thumbs up goes for. So if you're the kind of person who prefers these types of, in some cases, agile scrum exercises, you can use stickies, whatever. These are some other ideas to use for those icebreaker exercises. So in summary, I would say, everyone has feelings about change. It's best to start by eliciting and acknowledging those feelings. There are no predictable environments, even though Jim tells me they're going to be predictable any day now. And even though you think that the consequences are predictable, they're not. There are unintended consequences. There's money or other benefits hiding in whatever you're trying to do away with. There's important information or important processes or tribal knowledge or equipment or assets that you're not aware of that someone else is. Here's another thing I would mention. I imagine everybody is familiar with WIIFM. It doesn't roll off the tongue like most acronyms. What's in it for me? If you can't explain to Julie or Amanda or Mike or Matt what's in it for them in this change, they're not going to help you. They may not actively be a detractor, but if you can't help them understand and see what the benefit is for them, they're not going to help you with that change. So I would always urge you to find out for the other people, what's in it for me. I worked at law firms for a long time, And what's in it for attorneys is food. So if we were going to roll some new technology out, we would invite them to lunch or invite them to dinner and then show them. Because we had to give them some reason, some bait on the hook to get them there. There exists tried and true strategies for change management for a reason, including the Change Advisory Board and things like that. As I said at the beginning, I didn't discover, invent, or make anything up here, frame it in any interesting or novel way. I've just been through it a lot. I did a data center, $5.5 million data center move across from Radio City Music Hall in New York City on 6th Avenue. We had downtime of 15 minutes moving a data center 8 floors. I've done forklift technology upgrades that had really little impact. I've also done technology upgrades that had huge negative impact. So I try to believe that, I try to use these precepts, these exercises, these concepts because they are tried and true, and I urge you to do the same. I mentioned communicate. You think you're over communicating, you are not. You think you send too many emails, yeah, you probably do. But you probably didn't put up flyers in the elevators. You probably didn't have a Slack channel just for that. You probably didn't use an example I did once in a global technology change is we sent little bite-sized candy bars to everybody who used our knowledge base in the first week. So people in Dublin and Moscow were getting little bite-sized candy bars in the interoffice email from us, or the interoffice mail rather, not email, saying thank you for using the knowledge base. So we want to communicate in all different ways. We want to check the results, tweak and revise, and we want to make sure to set up a regular audit. Again, I hope that was not news to you, but I hope, if, like any pep rally, that it reminded you of the fact that you're rooting for your team to win and to do their best on the field. And if you're the coach or the captain or the star player, you still need that pep rally. You still need to get psyched up. You still need to review the playbook and practice and do everything you can to make that game a success, to come away with a W. And that's all this is. So I hope you got a few ideas out of this, and I would love to hear more about your challenges and successes, because that only helps me do better in my continuing efforts to drive positive change.